During the North African campaign of World War II, the British Army sent small groups of special forces behind enemy lines. Their mission? Reconnaissance, gathering intelligence, and launching sabotage raids. Most raids were executed by the SAS, the Special Air Service. Under the cover of night, this small band of men traveling in jeeps destroyed hundreds of German and Italian aircraft. Working with the SAS were the Long Range Desert Group, or LRDG. This unit kept vital intelligence flowing to the British Army. These Special Forces units established themselves as the elite of the British Empire troops fighting in North Africa. They were known as the Desert Raiders. Generations of Englishmen have been drawn to the deserts of the Middle East. From the Victorian explorer Sir Richard Burton to Lawrence of Arabia, the legendary desert raider of World War I. At the start of the 20th century, desert explorers began using the motor car for transportation. In 1915, during World War I, it was used for warfare. A Muslim movement known as the Senussi allied itself with Germany and Turkey, posing a threat to the British in Egypt. With no water to maintain horses in the desert, several cavalry units used Ford Model Ts for the light car patrols, guarding the borders and oases. By 1917, the light car patrol successfully drive the Senussi out of Egypt. Desert exploration continued in the post-war years. In the 1930s, one such explorer was Major Ralph Bagnold of the British Army Royal Corps of Signals. With the support of the Royal Geographical Society, he surveyed and charted vast tracts of North Africa. He wrote such esoteric works as The Physics of Blown Sand and Desert Dunes. He mastered the skills needed to navigate the featureless terrain and survive the hostile conditions. Bagnold developed methods and equipment that were critical to the LRDG and SAS operations on the North African battlefield. Meanwhile, Africa's other major colonial power, the French, were exploring vast tracts of the Sahara Desert. They developed specialized vehicles, including the Citroën Kégressa half-track, which maneuvered well on the shifting desert sands. These advances in desert mobility and survival were to prove invaluable. During the 1930s, the British maintained a garrison in Egypt to guard the Suez Canal, which connects the Mediterranean Sea to the Indian Ocean. Benito Mussolini's fascist Italy posed a threat to this vital 120-mile link to Britain's empire in India and the Far East. The Italians already had a colony next door in Libya, and when they conquered Abyssinia in 1934, the British faced the danger of an attack from two directions. The British had only 35,000 troops in Egypt. And they faced 250,000 Italians in Libya and 350,000 in Abyssinia. When World War II began, the British troops in Egypt went on full alert. but for 9 months, Italy remained neutral. In June 1940, German forces overran France, isolating Britain. Italy finally enters the war. If the Italian forces in Libya occupied Egypt, Britain would be cut off from much of her empire and the vital oil supplies in the Middle East. Accurate intelligence on the Italian movements was urgently needed, and by chance, an army unit had recently been created for that purpose. Soon after the outbreak of the war, Major Ralph Bagnold was traveling home to England when his ship docked in the Egyptian port of Alexandria for repairs. Bagnold took the opportunity to meet with General Sir Archibald Wavell, the British commander in the Middle East. Bagnold proposed his idea to form a small unit for long-range strategic reconnaissance. It would gather intelligence by observing the movement of enemy supplies and troops. Despite months of delay and the strong objections of several staff officers who viewed such units as private armies, Wavell authorized Bagnold to raise a force, drawing personnel from the British Empire units in the Middle East. Not only did the unit require self-reliant and adaptable men, but they also needed the mechanical expertise to maintain vehicles over vast distances in hostile terrain. Bagnold selected many of his men from New Zealand's troops. They had worked the land back home and were accustomed to harsh conditions, and they were experienced in keeping their farm machinery operational with limited resources. Others came from Rhodesia and South Africa. Only a few from Britain. Consisting of 11 officers, 76 men, and 43 vehicles, Bagnold's unit was known as the Long Range Patrols. The first vehicles used were commercial Chevrolet trucks, commandeered from both the Egyptian army and the local Chevrolet dealer. Eventually, the unit acquired Canadian-made Chevrolet trucks. These Chevys became the trademark of this famous formation. Armed with a variety of weapons, the trucks were the ideal size for desert patrols. The unit was officially created on July 10, 1940. The first patrol began on August 7th. The vehicles were equipped with fuel, weapons, and rations for 30 men, enough to last 3 weeks, over 1,200 miles of desert. The early patrols observed movements of the Italian army in the western desert. It became apparent that the Italian army was largely road-bound and reluctant to advance on Egypt.